Single players are dead. Long live single players. It's been a few years now since the demise of linear single-player games was proclaimed in favor of multiplayer and live service dominance. That's what you will often see some people saying. Fact is, single-player experiences are still going strong despite concerns over their long-term profitability. And while there is obviously a huge market for gamers who want to play solo, there are still those that criticize the linearity of some games. And to be fair, compared to open-world games especially, there are a handful of issues surrounding player freedom that not all single-player games address. Other issues center on level design, breaks in storytelling, or replayability, with this feature highlighting 10 such trends that are often overlooked by gamers. Backtracking without map markers. Many games go for a mixed approach in their level design. They're certainly linear in their quest design and storyline, but there's a semi-openness to it to promote a wider sense of exploration. When exploring the world, players would often stumble upon chests, presumably stuffed with powerful loot, to upgrade their arsenal, yet too often these chests are just out of reach or hidden behind some sort of impenetrable barrier. Taking a leaf out of modern platforming design, the idea here is that players will stumble upon some upgrade later that they can use to access previously inaccessible chests. Problem is that the semi-open world is just open enough to make relocating these chests an annoyance. Areas must be scoured again, and with so many chests to reach, it's a completionist's nightmare to remember where they all are. Map markers would be useful. Some games allow map markers. Why do some other games not? Unwanted cutscenes. Not talking about excessive cutscenes here. Unwanted cutscenes are those that penetrate otherwise fun gameplay. See, the thing with linear games is they give developers opportunity to tell a more precise, neatly paced story. But too often there's an over-reliance on cutscenes to do the narrative-heavy lifting. Put another way, there's a lot of single-player games out there that break up the gameplay with endless movies. Complete player freedom is a hard thing to conjure in a single-player linear game when compared to open world, of course, but whatever freedom there is in a linear experience is broken if there are cutscenes where there just don't need to be.
Moment. The battle has ended, but we are not yet free. The war is over.
Cutscenes with sudden QTEs. And worse still, in order to maintain some sort of player interactivity amidst all the cutscenes, some developers like to shoehorn in a QuickTime event or two. Now, this has been a trope falling out of favor for a while, but the dreaded unexpected QTE still exists. Some recent reboots are amongst the worst offenders here, but a scene like the entry to Bill's town in The Last of Us proves gameplay doesn't have to be broken up by cutscenes and QTEs. Specifically, it's the moment Joel gets hung by his feet upside down but must shoot his way to survival, with direction controls reversed for good measure. This scene feels like a cutscene, but it was all gameplay.
Just hurry! Hey! Hey, over here!
Enemies spawning in the same place. One easy way to add a sense of unfamiliarity with linear single-player games is to alternate the spawn locations of enemies after player death. It boosts replayability too, yet too many games opt to plonk enemies in exactly the same place every time. Imagine how good games would be if their enemies were somewhat different every time. Enemies spawning in random locations would just give it that little extra edge. Grindy post-game. A hangover from open-world game design, adding post-game content to linear single-player experiences doesn't always work. Endgame side bosses that are impossible to beat during the main campaign can be fulfilling to finally dismantle, but as already stated in this feature, linear game design can include a ton of backtracking with not a lot of map marking. Grinding isn't fun for everyone. An advantage of non-linear games is their ability to tell an effective story. Perhaps there's a lot to be said for games that end, and that's it. No need to carry on leveling up a character, collecting achievements, or any of that malarkey. Incorporation of multiplayer additions. We're talking loot boxes, microtransactions, that sort of thing here. The problem developers have with linear single-player games is that once the story is done, most players don't want to revisit the game. They purchase it, play it, job done. Although there is more to it, this is a reason why the industry has shifted to more open-world game design or live service business models. Developers and publishers want to keep players playing and paying for it too. To be clear, offering skins, levels, DLC behind paywalls has logic for companies that exist to make money, and it's important they do, else we'll continue to see the mass layoffs affecting the industry right now. It's just that sometimes the quality of the base game can suffer if profitability on superfluous extras is the focus during development. Poor level design. Level design doesn't always influence gameplay like it used to. Think back to Half-Life 2, turn-of-the-century Rainbow Six, Thief, and how the design of these games' levels had a direct influence on the tactical choices players made. Rainbow Six especially featured complex facilities to prepare the optimum route through. Resident Evil 7 exhibits fantastically complex level design, albeit with a fair bit of backtracking. Corridor shooters. Following on from poor level design, shooting games that tightly funnel players down a narrow path, removing choice from A to B, seems to be a design choice overlooked by a lot of players. Getting to the next firefight seems more important to players and developers than agency, or the opportunity to discover alternate routes and secrets. Perhaps this point is another symptom of the overarching need to generate revenue. Shooting games tend to exist primarily for multiplayer, with the single-player campaign being somewhat tacked on, like multiplayer used to be some 10 to 15 years ago. For a recent example of how to design a linear shooting experience with player agency intact, see Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon. Tightly designed set pieces.
Here, I've got you. Give me your hand.
Just go! Don't stop!
We're not talking about the cinematic aplomb of games like Uncharted, as those tightly choreographed set pieces serve the game extremely well. This point centers more on games where player choice is proposed, but the outcome is always the same. Think of the ending to The Last of Us 2. Would Ellie and Abby's final fight have been more successful if there was a choice for the player in how it ended? Invisible walls. Yes, you know the drill. Invisible barriers to funnel players down a certain path are a scourge on linear single players, especially with levels that are designed to provoke a sense of openness. Really, they're closed off for immersion-breaking reasons. Stray is a great game that puts the curiosity of a cat into the hands of the player. The cat should be able to explore anywhere, but the level boundaries are littered with fences and ledges that, for invisible reasons, the cat can't jump to. That's all for now. If you enjoy what you saw, please hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, now is a great time to subscribe. We upload brand new videos every single day. After subscribing, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time, right here on Gaming Bolt.